Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this FlaskUp.com Mr. Pandaria raiding guide, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the normal mode version of General Nazgrim in the new Siege of Orgrimmar raid. Now in order to complete this fight you're going to want to bring 2 tanks, preferably 2 healers due to some DPS constraints during this fight, and then the remaining a mixture of both melee and ranged DPS. Now during this fight you will notice that General Nazgrim has a rage bar, and we're going to talk about his rage later on in the guide, because first of all we're going to take a look at what your tanks actually get to do. Now General Nazgrim will apply a debuff onto the tanks that is currently tanking the boss called Sundering Blow, and this will inflict 600,000 physical damage and also cause them to have 10% reduced armor for 30 seconds. Now this will also generate 5 rage plus 5 additional rage per stack of Sundering Blow on the target. We got our tanks to swap on 3 stacks of Sundering Blow. Again, we'll speak about rage in a moment. Another ability your healers and raid in general will have to be aware of is called Bone Cracker, and this is where he will throw a mace in order to crack that player's bones, which will reduce their maximum health by 10% and cause them to bleed for 40,000 physical damage every second for 30 seconds. Unfortunately, all you've got to do is heal through this and use cooldowns as and when needed. Now General Nazgrim is a warrior of the Horde, so therefore it's only kind of typical that he has different stances, and he will take on different stances during the battle. His first stance is called Battle Stance, and this will cause him to generate 1 rage every second. It's quite a simple stance. His next one is called Berserker Stance, and this will cause him to increase damage dealt by 25%, but also damage taken by 25%. And also any rage he generates will be increased 100%. Now during the Berserker stance you're going to have to make sure that players in your raid do use cooldowns as and when needed. We also recommend that you use Time Warp, Bloodlust and Heroism during the first Berserker stance, as he does take 25% increased damage. Players that do have debuffs on them, such as the Bonecracker debuff and also the tanks as mentioned, will need that additional bit of healing during this stance. His third and final stance is called Defensive Stance, and this will cause him to reduce damage taken by 10% and also gain 3 rage every time he gets attacked. Now he cannot gain more than 3 rage every second, and any players that are afflicted by his Sundering Blow debuff will not cause Nazgrim to generate rage. Now during the defensive stance, all you need to do is get everyone to stop what they're doing apart from the tanks, and no longer hit General Nazgrim. You don't want him to generate excessive rage, and we're going to talk about that now. Now throughout the fight, General Nazgrim will cast several abilities that will require his rage to use. Now he will gain rage from various abilities during the battle, and I've already mentioned the majority of them, but there are more to come. Now General Nazgrim will prefer to use the ability that has the highest rage cost, and each ability has a different rage cost, so it's kind of easy to put 2 and 2 together. His current rage level will indicate what ability he is going to use. Now at 30 rage he will cast an ability called Heroic Shockwave, and this will cause him to leap at a player, inflict a moderate amount of physical damage within 10 yards of the impact location, and cause 3 aftershocks. Now what are aftershocks, you ask? They are kind of 3 lines that will come out from the Heroic Shockwave impact location, and they have this kind of orange AoE effect on the ground. You need to not stand in these, because after several seconds they will erupt, inflict a high amount of fire damage to players, and grant General Nazgrim 3 rage for every player that gets hit. Throughout the fight you'll also want to make sure that you are spread out as well as you possibly can be, because you don't want multiple players to get hit by the same Heroic Shockwave. At 50 rage, General Nazgrim will cast an ability called Korkron Banner, which will cause him to place a banner that causes his allies' attacks to generate 3 rage for General Nazgrim. So obviously he is going to spawn some kind of ad during this fight, spoiler alert, and you've probably seen it in the video already in the background. We'll talk about how to manage the ads later on, but when the Korkron Banner spawns, you need to change to it, nuke it down as fast as you can, and then continue with the fight as normal. When he has 70 rage, he will cast an ability called War Song, and this will unleash a hellish scream on every player in the raid and cause them to take 50% of their maximum health as physical damage. There's no way of avoiding this ability, your healers have simply got to heal through it and be happy. You may want to consider using some form of a healing cooldown if he is in his berserker stance, as you will take 25% additional damage on top of that. Finally, when General Nazgrim has 100 rage, he will throw a whirling blade that will last for the remaining duration of the fight. Now this whirling blade is called Ravager, and it will inflict 400,000 physical damage to anyone that is in 6 yards of its current location, and every second that a player gets hit by it, it will grant General Nazgrim 5 rage. So you ideally don't want him to ever reach 100 rage, and this is done by avoiding certain abilities and not getting hit by certain mobs. We'll speak about the adds that will be spawning in a minute, but it's worth noting that he also has an ability called Cooling Off, and this means that once he has cast an ability that costs rage, he will cool down for 15 seconds, and during this time he can't use any more abilities that cost rage. So he'll cast an ability that costs rage, and then 15 seconds will pass, and then during that time, if he gains any rage, his next ability will be based on how much rage he currently has. So for example, at the start of the fight, his first ability he'll cast is Heroic Shockwave, because 30 rage is the first that he will reach. He'll then have to cool off for 15 seconds, and if you happen to get hit by several abilities and he then has 71 rage, for example, he will then cast his Warsong ability. You kind of are able to predict what abilities are going to come based on his current rage level and the timer left on the cooling down debuff. So as previously mentioned, throughout the fight, General Nazgrim will spawn waves of random adds, and these adds are chosen from a pool of about 5 or 6 different adds, and we're going to take a look at them now. Something you didn't see at the start of this video was General Nazgrim is meant to have a range of Orgrimmar faithfuls with him, and this is a load of Orgrimmar grunts that will start the fight with him, and you simply need to pull them with Nazgrim and AoE them down as fast as possible. We wiped on this boss a few times, and after we did wipe, they didn't respawn, so we don't know if that's currently a bug or it's as the fight is intended to be. However, throughout the fight, as said, several of these mobs will spawn, and the first type of mob that can spawn is a Kor'kron Ironblade. Now, these Ironblades wield two-handed weapons, so they go around smashing people, and they have 2 abilities you have to look out for. The first one is Ironstorm, which will cause them to whirl around in a storm of iron, and inflict a moderate amount of physical damage to any players that are within 6 yards every second, and they will spin around for 1 minute. The second ability is called Last Stand, and it increases their maximum health by 25%, and they will use Last Stand when they are brought below 50% health, so your DPS should expect them to heal themselves when they do drop below 50%. Keep that in mind when killing them. These adds aren't of highest priority to be killed because you are able to easily move away from their Ironstorm ability, and you are aware that they are going to heal at some point, so it's kind of wasted DPS if you go all out on them. The second type of add that can spawn is a Kor'kron Arcweaver, and these are pretty much mages. They've got 3 abilities that you have to deal with, 2 of which can be interrupted and should be interrupted when possible. The first ability is called Arcane Shock, and this will cause them to target a player in your raid and shock them, which will inflict a moderate amount of arcane damage, and it will also increase the arcane damage dealt by the caster by 25% for 10 seconds, and this will keep on stacking up to a maximum of 99 times. However, if they cast Arcane Shock 99 times, you're doing something wrong. Arcane Shock can and should be interrupted as often as possible. The Arcweaver's next ability is called Magistrike, and this will call down a burst of arcane energy upon your raid, inflicting a moderate amount of arcane damage instantly, and then a small amount of arcane damage every 1 second for 20 seconds to enemies within 8 yards. This is kind of a flame strike ability that mages would normally have, and it will be in a specific place on the ground in your raid. Again, this ability can be interrupted when he is casting it, and should be interrupted as it can deal quite a lot of damage. And his third ability, which is very basic, is just called Unstable Blink, and it will cause him to blink or teleport 1 to 2 times in a random direction. Since these adds can output a lot of damage and will require quite a bit of interrupting, they're kind of high up on the to kill list, so keep that in mind. The next adds that you're going to face are called Cochron Assassins, and the assassins will strike from the shadows at the enemy's weakest targets. Ooh, scary. Now these have 3 abilities. The first one is Stealth, and they will begin the battle in Stealth, which will slow their movement speed by 50%, and if you do have stealth revealing abilities such as a Hunter's Flare, you should use them as it will give you an advantage against them at the start. Their next ability is called Backstab, and this will cause them to inflict 500,000 physical damage to a player if they attack them from behind. Now this kind of links in with their next ability, which is called Assassin's Mark, which will cause them to fixate on a non-tank target. If an assassin does fixate on you, then you must make sure you're facing it at all times during the fight. The final mob is called a Cochron War Shaman, and Shaman there meaning they are going to heal. Now their first ability is called Earth Shield, and this will protect their target with an earthen shield that will heal them for 5% of maximum health when damage is taken. This is a magic effect and should be dispelled off targets as soon as possible. His next ability is called Empowered Chain Heal, and it's pretty much what it says. It is a chain heal, and it will heal an ally for 10% of their maximum health and jump to a nearby ally, increasing healing by 50% per jump, and this can jump up to 5 different targets. This ability can and should be interrupted, and if the heal does go off, there is a chance it can get to General Nazgrim, which did happen to us quite a few times during the fight unfortunately, which lengthened it substantially. The final ability is called Healing Tide Totem, and this is pretty much like a Shaman's Healing Tide Totem. It will summon a totem that will heal allies within 8 yards for 30% of their maximum health every 3 seconds. As soon as this spawns, you want to kill it off as fast as possible. Due to all of the healing the War Shamans provide, you want to make these your highest priority to kill, and then you want to make the Arcweavers your next priority to kill, and then the Assassins your next priority to kill, and then the Iron Blades the lowest priority to kill. Now when General Nazgrim reaches 10% remaining health, he will call forth an additional wave of mobs. So if you have already got a wave up and you hit 10% health, then you are going to get more mobs spawning as well, so you do need to be prepared for that. If you don't use Bloodlust, Time Warp, Heroism, etc. during the Berserker stance, then you could use it sub 10% just to nuke him that extra little bit, maybe use it at 20%. You should manage the adds as best as you possibly can at 10%, as they will easily deal damage to your raid, and you may let the fight get out of control if several Shamans spawn and start healing everything. It can become very messy. So that's going to do it for this Mists of Pandaria raiding guide. If you would like to view a written version of this guide, then you can head on over to flaskup.com or click on the link in the video description below. Alternatively, if you'd like to view any of our other raiding guides, then please do feel free to click on any of the annotations that are currently on screen now. As always, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in future Mists of Pandaria raiding guides, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel.